This is Rumpole on the reform of Joby Johnson. Joby Johnson is a young lad who's accused of a crime against an old woman, and Rumpole is defending him. Strangely enough, Rumpole's house is broken into during the night and his briefcase with papers in it are stolen. But he goes on with this defence of a sort of artful dodger, and a man who appears to be a man of excellent goodwill, Sir Sebastian Pilgrim, is interested in looking after the children, particularly the slightly delinquent children of the area, and he comes to court and thinks that young Joby Johnson should confess and purge his crime in that way. Rumpole isn't too fond of people pleading guilty, and he wants to go on defending Joby Johnson. And as he goes on defending him, he uncovers strange and dark secrets. Really, one of the models I had for writing this episode was Oliver Twist and Fagin. In fact, in the room where I'm sitting and talking to you, I have a framed letter from Dickens telling someone not to complain about him losing their manuscript because he's far too busy. So here he is in the room, and here am I, remembering Fagin and Rumpole.
Out at the flat. We usually are at night. Don't shush me. I didn't start this conversation.
Can you hear?
Hear what?
Sounds.
Be not afraid, Hilda. The flat is full of noises, sounds and sweet airs that delight her not. Sometimes 1,000 twangling instruments will hum about thine ears, and sometimes voices that if I then had waked after long sleep will make me sleep again, I sincerely hope. Good night.
It's no doubt one of your friends, one of your business associates.
What on earth do you mean?
Well, he's some sort of burglar. Why don't you go find out what he's after?
No need to disturb the fellow.
Oh, Papa, are you afraid?
Hilda, there is...
Or is that a job you'd rather leave to a woman?
It's a fair cop.
It's just like you, Rumpole, to make a joke out of burglars.
Well, the television set still seems to be with us.
Did you leave that window open?
Yes. No. Oh, I can't remember. You're right. Make a terrible window. That is odd.
What is?
My brief for the Queen versus Joby Johnson.
Oh, no one's stolen that.
No, but...
But what?
I left it in my briefcase. Somebody's been at that. Look at it. That's not my phone. And this is not the way I leave a brief I've been working on.
Checkbook. Mr. Freeman's money untouched. There's nothing missing.
Something is.
What?
The proof of evidence of Joby Johnson alleged for of old age pensioners. His statement of defence, such as it was, has melted into air, into thin air.
So somebody was here?
Yes, you're usually right, of course. Somebody was.
Any sort of news in the paper, Philly?
Some sort of news, yes. War in Bulgaria, earthquakes in South America, renewed threat of global warming.
No, I mean important news. The list of new QCs, for instance.
Ah, well. Look for yourself.
No, I don't want to look for myself, Philly. I'm not brave enough to look for myself. I don't think I could put up with another disappointment.
The list of new Queen's Counsel will be announced by the Lord Chancellor next month. It's expected to include
Me?
Tabitha Merriweather, the brilliant Ghanaian woman civil rights lawyer from Miles Crudgington's radical chambers in the Edgware Road.
Nothing to say I'll get it.
Nothing to say you won't. I mean, you asked often enough.
Only 5 times, Philly.
They'll probably give it to you for persistence.
We all know you got it first time.
Bit of a fluke, actually.
No, it wasn't a fluke. It's because you're a woman.
Doing your fitness classes, is he, Jovi?
Getting into shed to beat up someone else's gun.
That's a brave boy. Going in 3 rounds with an old lady takes a...
I never. You arguing with this boy. But I haven't been convicted.
Oh, he's innocent. Hear that, Snotty?
They got you done as a granny basher. Do you want to argue? I'm not here, Snotty, not with you. I'm just in court. I mean, my brief's going to get me off. No alternative.
Trust us, sunshine. You've got no better briefs than we are.
Oh, Erskine Brown.
Ballard.
I thought you'd be glad to know your name cropped up when I was speaking to old Keith from the Lord Chancellor's office.
Did it? Ballard.
Really? Naturally, he was interested to hear my views, as head of chambers, on your application for silk.
Interested? Was he really interested? I mean, they're taking my application seriously.
Well, naturally, they take it seriously. Keith was saying it's become a sort of annual event, like Christmas.
You mean they look forward to it?
Let's say they give it their serious consideration. And I was able to let him have my views fairly fully.
Thank you, Ballard. Thank you very much.
Yes, of course. Yes, I said I did not think there would be any repetition of the incidents in which you've been involved in the past, such as the complaint I had to deal with, lodged by our new typist, Miss Clapton.
You told Keith from the Lord Chancellor's department about the dog?
Yes, I felt it was my duty. It was some evidence which the Lord Chancellor might have to consider of your lack of gravitas.
My lack of what?
What? It might be some indication that you are not fundamentally sound.
Who said that to Keith? From the Lord Chancellor's department.
And I said it in your own best interests. You pompous freak! I don't think I heard that, Erskine Brown.
Oh, yes, you did, Ballard. And if you don't know what it means, I suggest you ask Dot Clapton. It's a view of your character quite commonly held at number 3 Equity Court.
Pompous? What exactly?
What have you done to your face?
Accident.
Oh, yes. Mistook it for an ashtray, did you?
That's right, yeah.
We can help you make a complaint to the Governor.
Leave it out. Oi.
What?
You leave it out and all. Well, you want to get me killed or something?
No, strange as it may seem, Joby, we're trying to get you off. Now then, a Mrs. Louise Parsons, age 75, living at an end house, number 1 Pondicherry Road, somewhere behind Euston Station, answered a ring at her front door on the morning of October the 19th. A youth was there who said, "You still living here, Mrs. Parsons?" and then ran off. Later that day, a person she identifies as the same youth, though his face was partially covered, again rang her doorbell, and when she answered it, forced his way in, attacked her, punched her in the face and stomach, oh, charming, tied her up with some clothes from the kitchen, kicked her, broke up most of the crockery and some of the furniture in the house, left with Mrs. Parsons' post office savings book, in which there was a balance of £5.79. She later identified the defendant, Joby Johnson, at an identification parade in Euston. Joby, it might be as well when you're giving evidence to resist the temptation to call the victim an old bat. It is not an expression likely to endear you to the jury. Oh, by the way, have you got a spare copy of Joby's statement? Mine seems to have warped in the night.
The defence is an alibi, Mr. Rumpole, if you remember.
You read what I said, didn't you?
Yes, Joby, of course I did. Over the last few months, it's been my sole bedtime study. So far as I can remember. That's a promising start, isn't it? So far as I can remember, at the time Mrs. Parsons was attacked, I was hanging about near the Superloo in Euston Station with 3 girls down from Manchester who were singing and dancing a bit.
Mr. Bernard says that you was a brilliant brief. Can't you even get me off on this?
I may well be a brilliant brief, Joby, but I am unable to walk on water or transmute base metals into gold. Nor am I able to make use of a so-called alibi which ignores the most important piece of evidence in this case.
Oh, yeah, what's that meant to be, then?
Your palm print on Mrs. Parsons' front door.
Yeah, well, I'm not for putting my hands up, as long as that's clear. I don't care what they says. You've got that.
likable young man, Mr. Rumpole.
Mr. Bernard, that is the understatement of the year. Do you know what's deteriorated since the good old, bad old days? The character of our young offenders. Where have all the artful dodgers gone? And where are all those cheerful cockney pickpockets that stuck their thumbs in their waistcoats and says, "Watch me, old Cooksparrow"? It was a sad day for England when the artful dodgers turned into the Joby Johnsons.
Yes, Henry?
I couldn't have better staff than you, Dot. The senior clerk would not wish for more efficient staff, or more pleasant, and I've done my very best to make you feel thoroughly at home here in Equity Court. But, a barrister's chambers is, well, a barrister's chambers.
You got some criticism of my typing, Henry?
Quite frankly, Dot, your typing has been little short of perfection.
Or at the speed at which I get the fee notes out?
You get the fee notes out, Dot, at the speed of light. Now, what I wanted to say was, well, barristers. I mean, some of them are what I suppose you'd call old-fashioned.
Old-fashioned? I'd call them museum pieces still in Y-fronts and braces if anyone cared to look. Something amusing you, Mr. Erskine Brown?
No, really nothing, Dot. Honestly, nothing. It's just that... well, I haven't had much to laugh at recently, that's all.
Congratulations. That's what Chambers needs, someone to make a statement. After all, we're not all clones, are we? We're not all imitation male lawyers in pinstripes. We're the great sisterhood of free spirits. Are you, Miss Probert? I'm just trying to get on with Mr. Inchcape's typing.
John, there's a couple more pages of the particulars of negligence.
Well, here, Mr. Inchcape, I'll make you my top priority.
Mr. Rumpole?
Yes?
It's the office of the Under-Secretary at the Home Office. I wonder if you'd find it convenient to call in for a brief word.
Oh, does he really? Tell him you can't fit him in with my other engagements.
So now I'll have to call it back on that one. I'll have to find a good window of time in Mr. Rumpole's diary.
Henry?
Yes, Mr. Ballard?
I shall have to call a Chambers meeting on the most serious situation that has just arisen. I hope you will all be able to attend as a matter of urgency.
I don't know about that, Ballard. It depends on my business with Her Majesty's government.
John Mortimer, Under-Secretary, Home Affairs, with special responsibility for prisons. I'm the fellow who tries to keep them in.
Horace Rumpole, counsel for the defence. I'm the fellow who tries to keep them out.
Very good. Was that good, Elspeth? Elspeth Johns, Parliamentary Private Secretary.
Hello.
Do come and sit down, Mr. Rumpole. You may have wondered why I asked you to drop by. Please.
Here.
About a young lad called Joby Johnson.
Oh, really?
I'm a constituency MP. I hope a good one. I've had Joby Johnson's mother round at my surgery week in, week out, poor woman. She really is quite distracted.
I expect she is.
I've told the old girl that I'd see he was probably defended. Of course, I was delighted to hear you were appearing for him. I know you'll see that he doesn't make things worse by putting up some sort of stupid defence. So can I tell her he's being well looked after?
Oh, yes, he's having the time of his life. Banged up for 23 hours a day in a 7-foot cell with a couple of chamber pots, and a sworn enemy that passes the time by stubbing cigarettes out on his face. And of course, Joby Johnson is entirely innocent.
Innocent? That's interesting. Is that your view of the matter?
As innocent as we all are. Until 12 fellow citizens come back into court and tell him he's guilty.
You're giving us your courtroom performance. It's very good. Isn't it, Elspeth?
Oh, very good indeed.
I was merely trying to point out the conditions endured by prisoners on remand.
Oh, worse than they were 100 years ago. We know that, don't we, Elspeth?
Only too well, I'm afraid, Mr. Rumpole. And our minister would be the first to agree with you.
Then why doesn't your minister do something about it?
Unfortunately, we live in a democracy. We have to listen to the instructions of our masters with the votes. So we prefer to leave prison reform to the private sector. People like you, of course. And Seb Pilgrim.
Who?
You don't know Seb? He runs Yurt.
You must have heard of Sir Sebastian Pilgrim.
He's an absolutely splendid fellow. He carried his bat for England. He does wonderful things with hopeless cases like Joby Johnson. Teaches them cricket, gives them a bit of pride in themselves. Really reforms their characters. You two should get together.
Oh, really? Do you think so? I've never carried my bat anywhere. Hilda! Hilda! What's wrong? Mary?
Don't be so silly, Rumbo. It's perfectly simple. You just press 34896 and the yellow
all night with a double-barrel shotgun? Come on now, darling, you've got to give the criminal classes a chance to earn their living. Oh, hello.
Good afternoon, Mr. Rumpole. Kensington CID, DS Appleby. Your wife called us in again. Seems the villains have turned against you. What's the matter, sir? Been losing nut cases, have you?
Very amusing.
I insisted Mr. Appleby came back to look for fingerprints, Rumpole. To you, Mr. Appleby.
Thank you, madam. A very thorough investigator, your good lady, Mr. Rumpole. She knows my job better than I do.
Oh, yes, Mrs. Rumpole's one of nature's detective superintendents. I shouldn't worry about that if I were you. It's almost certainly a professional wearing gloves.
And didn't take anything of value, as I understand it, sir. Just some papers out of one of your cases. Now, I wonder, who's the office of that,
Yes, I've been wondering about that myself. Hello. Yes, Rumpole speaking. What? Sir Sebastian Pilgrim wants a word with me. What about? Joe B. Johnson. Yes, all right, join the queue.
A pompous prick.
I called him that. Our head of chambers. And the next table was full of solicitors.
That, Claude, was the most persuasive and accurately phrased speech you ever made down the Old Bailey, as well as the shortest.
He told Keith from the Lord Chancellor's office that I had no bottom.
Yes, well, he's got enough for both of you.
But I wasn't fundamentally sound. I wouldn't mind to tell the Lord Chancellor a few home truths about our leader.
Like the fact that he's a smarmy, hypocritical, god-bothering vegetarian. No, Claude, the time for speeches is over. The time for action has come. The hour of decision.
Oh, Philly, what does that mean exactly?
It means, Claude, I am on the case.
Mr. Rumpole.
That's me.
I'm Fred Bry. I've come to take you to Sir Sebastian Pilgrim.
Thank you.
Yours, Mr. Rumpole.
I'm sure it's yours. Fancy go the wicket? Oh, not in the least. I'm allergic to any form of sport.
Except for teasing Her Majesty's judges. You're very famous among our lads. You're not allergic to a drink, I hope.
I thought you'd never asked.
I'm sorry, Mr. Rumpole. The lads have voted this smoke-free zone.
Oh, really? What are you running here, a monastery?
Very funny. Delightful wit. That's what old Tom Mottram told me about you. No, I don't make the rules. The boys do. Self-discipline is the name of the game.
Oh, I thought it was cricket.
No alcohol, no smoking, and of course if anyone catches one of their number dropping an E.
A what?
Ecstasy. Anyone indulging in any sort of drug gets a hard from the other fellas. A very hard time indeed. It's no good imposing rules from above. How's the coffee? I'm afraid we're not up to your gastronomic standards, Mr. Rumpole. We have more important things to think about.
Yes, Joby Johnson, for instance.
Ah, yes, Joby. I must admit I'm worried about Joby.
Most people seem to be.
What we find here is that the first step to reform is to admit to what you've done, if only to your mates.
Plead guilty.
Even if you only admit it to yourself. Look over there, what we call our quiet corner.
What is it, a prayer meeting?
Oh, yes, something like that. Now, the young lads over there are coming out with all their commentaries and this, and they talk them through, and then Fred Bry tells them where that sort of thing leads.
Your driver?
And Fred should know. He'd just done 6 years for robbery when I found a job for him.
So you believe confession's good for the soul, do you?
Don't you?
Oh, perhaps. Much good at keeping you out of the nick.
If you could just get him to admit what he's done, if only to himself, you could get him to face up to it, not to tell any silly lies, it could be at the beginning of his way back to reality.
It could be the beginning of about 5 years in choking.
He's come here often over the last 2 years. He's had his talking sessions in the pit with Fred and the other fellows. I just don't want to write him off as one of my failures. I'm sure we both want to do what's best for him.
I'm sure.
Tell me, what can I do to help?
Well, I could call you as a character witness. A bit more impressive than a shriek or the local vicar. I call Sir Sebastian Pilgrim and carried his back for the
You can count count on me, Mr. Rumpole. I tell you, you can count on me.
You were talking about Joby, Mr. Rumpole. You and Sam?
Oh, yes, we were, yes.
Big dis with Joby, separately. We're both trying hard. Still, it's up to you now, Mr. Rumpole. Get the boy to own up to what he's done. It's the only way.
Certain standards of civilization have to be maintained at Equity Court. I mean, we couldn't have people turning up in war paint, could we?
No, Sam, you're absolutely right, of course.
Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Erskine Brown.
I don't see why not.
What'd you say, Rumpole?
I said I don't see why not. I'm all for anything that adds a bit of drama to the surroundings. Now, if you'd come into the classroom this morning, Ballard, wearing full war paint, waving a guy on your way to a particularly bloody summons under the red sack.
Rumpole, we are at something of a crisis in Equity Court. I mean, if this sort of thing goes unchecked, we could be off down the slippery slope towards...
What?
Suede shoes.
What?
They tell me there are men in Miles Crutchington's set who go into chambers wearing suede shoes.
Shock horror.
Yes, so you see what this sort of thing can lead to.
Oh, you're so right, Sam. That is the most terrible warning.
I agree with you, Ballard, 100%. Dot was making an unacceptable statement of female submission. It was nothing but a kind of harem signal to any would-be sheikh foolish enough to take her up on the offer. Dot's knows, not to put too fine a point on it, is politically incorrect.
Erskine Brown, do you not have an opinion on this matter?
Oh, I don't imagine I've got enough bottom to express an opinion.
Of what?
Gravitas. Ballard doesn't think I've got enough of it.
Gravitas. Sounds like a breakfast food. Well, sorry, it must be our pressure of business. Can't spend any more time on this discussion, fascinating though it may be.
Just before you go, Rumpole, I suggest we leave all further action in this matter to our head of chambers. I'm sure Sam Ballard will deal with it with his usual wisdom.
You're feeling quite well, Portia.
Oh, perfectly well, thank you, Rumpole, yes. I am positive that Sam can be trusted to have a tactful word in the appropriate quarter. Can't you, Sam?
Oh, Inchgate. You didn't say what you thought about the rich ornament in Dorothea Clapton's nostril.
To be quite honest, Rumpole, I never even noticed it was there.
Oh, did you not?
No.
How very interesting. Hello, Dot. I just popped in to see what's on for tomorrow.
Mr. Rumpole, I wanted your advice.
Now, well, I don't have any opinion one way or the other. I suppose it does add a touch of colour to chambers.
What adds a touch of colour?
Nothing in particular.
About my dad. He lives not far from here, actually.
Oh, I thought you and Henry hailed from Bexley Heath.
That's where my mum lives. They split up when I was about 7.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Don't worry, it wasn't a great tragedy. My dad's an awkward sort of customer. Call him bloody-minded and you'd be paying him a compliment. The thing is, they want to do some new development down his street, but he won't sell them his house. Tells them he's too old to move now anyway. And tells them...
It's hardly my spécialité de la maison. Now, if your dad had committed a murder...
Perhaps he will if they go on asking him to sell up. They send people round with letters now telling him he's got to move. And what a good it'll do him. He's got them ringing on his doorbell all hours.
That must be highly irritating. Well, where does he live exactly?
McGlinty Terrace.
Oh, yeah?
Round behind Euston Station. Do you know the area?
I think I might do, yes.
You were superb today, Sam.
Well, thank you for your support, Mrs. Erskine Brown.
Phillida.
Yes, of course, Phillida.
Think nothing of it. What I admired was the way that you managed to dominate the proceedings, and yet everything was, well, fun.
Well, I do try to make our chambers meetings enjoyable occasions.
And you succeed, Sam, you really do. I suppose it's just your personality.
Really?
Do you know something? All these years that you and I have been the only two silks in chambers, do you know, we've never had lunch together. Doesn't that strike you as rather strange?
No. Not really. No. I mean, you're a member of Inner Temple, and I'm at Gray's Inn, and we've just never had lunch in the same place.
Sam, why don't you invite me?
All right, then. Phillida, I will. There's a very nice little health food bar in Fetter Lane.
Oh, that doesn't sound terribly romantic to me. What about the Savoy Grill?
Savoy Grill?
That's the one. I thought you'd never ask.
There's a profile of one of your friends here, Rumpole. You ought to be proud of him.
Oh? What friend is that?
Well, not one of your criminal classes, certainly. Not one of your beloved burglars who entered by way of the fire escape to rob us. No, this is someone you ought to be proud of. You might invite him round to dinner one night.
Invite who round to dinner, Hilda?
Sir Sebastian Pilgrim, one-time all-rounder for England. Seems he spends much of his time trying to reform young criminals. You don't spend much of your time trying to do that, do you, Rumpole? That wouldn't be your sort of thing at all.
Neither is cricket.
He's also a brilliant businessman, chairman of Maiden Over Holdings. Said told his shareholders recently, "I believe in England."
Oh, good for him. I suppose the rest of us think it's a figment of our imagination, do we?
He was in partnership with Tom Mottram, MP, until Mr. Mottram joined the government and resigned all his directorships. They're planning to build a multi-storey hotel and shopping centre.
Tom Mottram. So, that's the connection. Did they say where this monstrous carbuncle is going to be dumped?
Why, you were thinking of investing?
Oh, perhaps a little of my time.
Behind Euston Station.
I've been away such a lot doing these boring big cases all over the world. I didn't realise what I was missing.
Didn't you? And what were you missing exactly?
Well, to be honest, Sam, my head of chambers.
My head?
All alone in places like Hong Kong.
You think about me in Hong Kong?
You don't mind, do you?
Well, no, of course not, Mrs. Escobar.
Phillida.
I mean, I can't stop thinking about whoever you like, Phillida. But I've never been to Hong Kong.
Oh, yes, you have. In my form.
Really? I didn't know.
Oh, Sam, I can see you've had lots of practice chatting up women over lunch.
Well, not really, no. I quite often send Miss Clapton out for sandwiches. Which reminds me, I've asked Henry to have a tactful word with her about the subject we were discussing.
Her nose?
Yes, exactly.
Splendid. Takes a real man to act as decisively as that. You know, the odd thing is that Claude believes that he might do better with the Lord Chancellor if he were a woman. What do you think of that?
I think that's very silly.
So do I.
I mean, Claude Erskine-Brown couldn't possibly be a woman, could he?
I think he found it extremely difficult.
Yes, so might just as well forget the idea and settle down to being himself.
I think that's what he's afraid of. He said you'd had a little chat about his application with dear O'Keefe from the Lord Chancellor's office.
Yes, Erskine-Brown didn't seem too pleased about that. In fact, he used an expression which I couldn't possibly repeat. Well, not in a public place.
Oh, that's right. Yes, he called you a...
Phillida, par devant, le waiter. Is this champagne?
Of course it is.
Did I order this?
Of course you did. I think you wanted to celebrate the fact that we're going out together at long, long last.
Causes a rather curious sensation in the nose.
You've got to forgive Claude. He had a deprived childhood. That's the sort of language chaps pick up at Winchester. You didn't think he ought to take silk?
In his own best interests, Phillida.
Oh, your fillings. You were thinking entirely of me.
Was I?
You thought that I'd get less leading briefs with Claude competing. Well, look, I want to be entirely honest with you. Now that we've become real friends.
Do you?
Of course I do. And I want you to be the first to know. I shan't be looking for leading briefs in the future.
You shan't?
I'm leaving the bar.
Phillida!
For good. I've made up my mind. Oh, don't look so sad, Sam. I'm not leaving the country or anything. I'll still be able to meet. And, you know what might make it really easy for me?
Easy?
If Claude were away in, let's say, Hong Kong, doing leading briefs for long periods of time, you and I could have lunch together. You'd like that, wouldn't you?
Yes, Phillida. I believe I would.
Well, look, do me a small favour. Help us both.
How?
Just pick up the phone to dear O'Keefe in the Lord Chancellor's office. Tell him there can be no possible objection to Claude being entirely wrapped in silk, even though he is a man.
And that would make it...
Considerably. Here's to us both.
Regina versus Johnson coming up next, Mr. Rumpole.
Yes, indeed.
Doesn't look like a winner.
No. And be warned, Mr. Bernard. We're up against one of the most subtle tacticians. The artfulest dodger down the Old Bailey.
Oh? Who's that, Mr. Rumpole?
Mrs. Phillida Erskine-Brown, QC. The Portia about Chambers.
Yes, a silk to prosecute?
Yep.
Putting us up before the Red Judge. I heard a whisper in the list office our boy was getting the start treatment.
Oh, well, mugging is the flavour of the month, isn't it? The powers that be want to show that they're all terribly concerned. Still never despair, Bonnie Bernard. There are still a few things we can do.
Oh, chat.
Oh, just routine inquiries. Here you are. There. Get in touch with a Mr. Clapton of McGinty Terrace. That's round near Euston Station. See how far that is from Pondicherry Road, will you? Oh, and discover everything you can about these people.
What, maiden overholding?
Maiden overholding, yes, and any estate agents that they might employ. Oh, and while we're still on the subject of young Dawkins.
Dawkins? Dawkins? Who's Dawkins, Mr. Rumpole?
Oh, John Dawkins, the original Artful Dodger. Let us not forget that he was only part of a much wider organization being run from old Fagin's thieves' kitchen. I don't know if you've had much experience with this judge, have you, Portia?
Graves? No, never been before him. You?
To my deep regret.
Silence in court. Falls down.
Mr. Justice Graves is an absolute four-letter man. He's humorless, tedious, unsympathetic, and unjust. In a word, Portia, our judge is a complete pain in the fundament.
Mr. Rumpole, it may come as a surprise to you to know that the acoustics in this court are absolutely perfect. And my hearing is exceptionally keen. And I can hear absolutely every word that is spoken on counsel's benches.
See what I mean?
Oh, Henry, it's still there. I saw it this morning, the undesirable ornament. I thought you were going to speak to Miss Clapton.
Didn't the Chambers meeting decide as you were going to do that, Mr. Ballard, as head?
Yes, they most certainly did. And I deputed the task to you, Henry.
No, I'm sorry, sir, but no. That is well outside normal clerking duties. It's not for me to make personal and provocative remarks to valued staff.
Very well. I shall have to do it myself, but not now. I'm due for the recorder in 10 minutes. Is Mrs. Erskine in this court?
She is indeed, sir, prosecuting Mr. Rumpole.
Yes, well, I expect she'd appreciate it if I just...
We say that Johnson viciously attacked this lady, old enough to be his grandmother, and robbed her of what were no doubt her small lifetime savings.
£5.79.
Did you say something, Mr. Rumpole?
I was just reminding my learned friend, my lord, that the amount concerned in this case is exactly £5.79.
Mr. Rumpole, I have no doubt we shall be hearing from you later. Now I think we might let Mrs. Erskine Brown open her case without any more frivolous interruptions. Yes, Mrs. Erskine Brown. Yes, Mrs. Erskine Brown.
It remains to be seen, members of the jury, what sort of defence, if any, will be put forward for Johnson. It is alleged that while this appalling attack was taking place, Johnson was dancing with some girls from Manchester outside the Superloo at Euston Station.
What is a Superloo exactly?
It is, I believe, my lord, a kind of superior lavatory.
Kind of superior lavatory.
McGlinty Terrace, there we are. Turning off Pondicherry Road. Right behind Euston Station.
Did you say something, Mr. Rumpole?
Oh, nothing more at the moment, my lord, no.
Some weeks later, Mrs. Parsons, did you attend an identification parade?
I did, and the police officers, they were very kind to me. They made me a cup of tea and...
Yes, and did you identify the youth who visited you twice on the 19th and attacked you on the second occasion?
There he is.
You are pointing to the defendant, Joby Johnson. Thank you very much, Mr.
Rumpole. I managed to get copies of the letter to your friend, Mr. Captain.
Not a friend, just the father of a friend. Thank you, Bonnie Bernard.
I suppose you have questions, Mr. Rumpole?
Mrs. Parsons, do you own your little house in Pondicherry Road?
My husband saved for it, worked all his life, the booking clerk at the station.
Yes, were you not offered a considerable sum of money for that little house?
I wasn't going to move no matter how often they asked me.
Now, Mrs. Parsons, you say that on that morning a young man rang at your front door and said, are you still living here, Mrs. Parsons?
Yes, he did.
Did you think that there was any connection with that question, with the repeated requests to you to sell your house?
Not at the time, no.
My lord, this witness can't be invited to speculate. We should leave such flights of fancy to my learned friend.
My sentiments entirely, Mrs. Erskine Brown. Move on to the next matter, Mr. Rumpole.
Oh, nice one, Portia. You've got old Death's Head eating it.
Ah, that.
Oh, did you not, my lord? Must be the acoustics. Mrs. Parsons, later that day, a young man rang at your front door. When you went to answer it, he attacked and robbed you.
I heard the bell. I thought, he's back again, so I'll give him a piece of my mind.
So you weren't frightened when you went to answer the door the second time?
Not then, no. I was when I saw him, though.
Oh, my.
Well, he had this, what they call it, balaclava.
A balaclava, yes. Yes, you say in your statement that the caller's face was hidden at that time.
It was hidden a bit, yes.
Well, Mrs. Parsons, how do you know it was the same boy? Right, Joey. Confession time. Confession's good for the soul, they say. Come on, admit it. Somebody told you to go to Mrs. Parsons' house and say, "You still living here, Mrs. Parsons?" and then scarp her, didn't they? That was in the morning. What did you do in the afternoon?
I told you.
Yes, and for once I believe you. Dropping an E you'd bought from some girls down from Manchester, which led to an unseemly display of folk dancing outside the Superloo in Euston Station, and doubtless a horrible reaction of shivering, thirst, and a certain loss of memory.
How comes you know so much about doing an E, Mr. Rumpole?
How come Mr. Rumpole knows about everything? I know you went to that house in the morning because your palm print was on the door and Mrs. Parsons saw you. That's why she picked you out at the ID parade. I know you did not go there in the afternoon because the group you work for was so desperate to find out how the fence they burgled my flat. They're dead scared you're going to tell the truth, Joby. They're scared you're going to tell them that another lad came after you and did the serious business. You're going to have to tell the truth before this case is over.
What's this group you're on about?
Oh, don't you play games with me, sunshine. You know perfectly well who I mean. You are Sir Sebastian Pilgrim?
I am. Needing no introduction to us, I'm sure. Not to those of us who witnessed your century against Pakistan at Lord's in your final test. I've no doubt the jury remember.
And do you run an organization called the Youth Enterprise and Reform Trust, allegedly to help young men who have fallen into criminal ways?
Once again, Sir Sebastian, your wonderful work with Yurt is well known to many of us.
I do run that organization to help delinquent boys, yes. I don't know why Mr. Rumpole uses the word allegedly.
No doubt a slip of the tongue, wasn't it, Mr. Rumpole?
Not exactly, my lord, no. If I may go on a little, my meaning will become clear. Are you also the chairman of Maiden Over Holdings, which plans a development behind Euston Station of a large hotel and a tourist shopping centre?
I am.
And weren't you having trouble with certain householders who refuse to sell their homes to you to make way for this magnificent usher? Do you employ, among others, a firm of estate agents called Jibber and Jonas?
The name's familiar.
Oh, please answer the question. Do you employ them or not?
From time to time.
Is that a letter from Jibber and Jonas to a Mr. Peter Clapton of McClinty Terrace, asking him to sell his home to make way for a new development?
It would appear to be, sir.
Was that your hotel development?
I don't know anyone else with similar plans.
Perhaps no one else is so anxious to invest in the future of this great city, Mr. Rumpole.
And was a Mrs. Parsons of Pondicherry Road another householder who refused to sell her house to your company?
I really don't remember.
Oh, do try.
In any event, I'm sure she was made a very fair offer.
Sir Sebastian, do you hold the view that delinquents should admit what they have done and tell the truth about it?
Oh, yes. I believe that is the start of reform.
Do you really want Joby Johnson to tell the truth about this case?
Yes.
Very well. He came to your club after having been in trouble over some minor matters.
Yes. My lord, I thought there was some good in the lad. I hoped I might make rather a useful spin bowler out of it.
Not so useful as you, Sir Sebastian, if we remember the Australian wickets in 1975. Went down like 19 members of the jury.
And quite a useful messenger to send around about your company's business.
Well, of course not.
Oh, why not, Sir Sebastian?
I don't wish to be unkind, but Joe is not exactly the brightest of lads. He's not the sort of boy you could trust with any sort of business.
Well, what sort of boy would you trust?
I don't know what you mean.
Who did you choose, then, to terrorize Mrs. Parsons into selling her house to you?
What?
Isn't that the sort of job you offer to enterprising young men, Sir Sebastian Pilgrim?
That is an absolutely ridiculous suggestion. There is no truth in it at all.
Mr. Rumpole, you will confine yourself to questions about your client's character.
Delighted, my lord. Always always anxious to please. Well, Sir Sebastian, I'm glad we can agree about some things. Joby Johnson's talents are strictly limited. Good enough, perhaps, to send round before lunch with a final warning. But the afternoon terrorist attack had to be done by another of your protégés, partly shrouded in a balaclava helmet.
Mr. Rumpole, this is quite intolerable. You persist in attempting to involve this most distinguished gentleman in the terrible crime of which your client stands accused. That is not the way in which we play the game in these courts.
I'm so sorry, my lord. I have never entirely understood the rules of cricket. Oh, Dot, give my regards to your dad. Tell him he's been tell him to watch out for young men in balaclava helmets.
I reckon Dad can look after himself. He's an old terror, Dad is.
Good. Oh, by the way, Dot.
Yes, Mr. Rumpole?
About that precious ornament in your nose. We had a chambers meeting about that.
You never.
Yes, we did. Oh, nothing much was decided. But young Dave Inchcape.
Yes, Mr. Rumpole?
He said he'd never even noticed it.
Oh, Phillida, I did it a couple of weeks ago.
Congratulations. Did what, exactly?
Spoke to old Keith from the Lord Chancellor's office. I told him I'd been quite wrong about Claude, and that recently he'd been showing a good deal of gravitas.
How about Bottom?
Yes, a lot of that too.
Oh, good. Good, well, I'm glad you put that right.
So, Phillida. So how about lunch? Honestly, it really is very nice in the health food bar, and there's a little corner table. And I wouldn't have to send a taxi back to Chambers like last time for an extra sub from petty cash.
Sorry, Ballard, I'm going to be rather too busy for lunches out in the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Could I just glance at the Times? Oh, I say, fabulous day. Absolutely fabulous. Keep the change, buy yourself a drink, old chap. 2 drinks if necessary, with the compliments of one of Her Majesty's Council, learned in the law. It's a happy day.
Johnson, the jury reached a verdict with which I entirely agree. You chose, through your representative, Mr. Rumpole, to make an entirely unwarranted attack on a great British sportsman and public figure. A man who has devoted his life to the reform of youths such as yourself. Unhappily, you have proved to be quite unreformable. You will be detained for 5 years. Take him down.
Bowled out Monty Bernard by the bloody umpire.
Excuse me, sir. Rumpole! Hello there, dear old Rumpole. You've read the Times today, of course.
No, not much of it. I've had other things on my mind.
The simplest. I shall be leading you, my dear old fellow. I shall be sitting in front of you.
Well, after today's result, I probably deserve it.
If much matters.
Yes. Well, no doubt she understood my feelings on the matter. And now we have Miss Clapton's nose in a state of decency. Well, that's another rather difficult problem in Chambers solved.
My sole success.
Oh, Erskine Brown, by the way. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you, Ballard. Seems that gravitas is no longer called for.
No. I meant your wife, Philly. You must be very, very proud.
What about Philly?
Well, haven't you seen the front page with the photograph?
No, I was only looking for the soup list. Good heavens. Well, she never told me.
Mrs. Erskine Brown never told anyone, not even her clerk.
Oh, Portia, how thou art translated.
So that's what she meant when she said she was leaving the bar?
Silence in court, all stand.
If your ladyship pleases.
Yes, Mr. Erskine Brown.
Your ladyship has, of course, your ladyship's usual firm judgment,
put your finger upon the heart, the very nub of this case.
Mr. Erskine-Brown, if you have a point, please get to it.
Yes. Yes, Rumpole speaking. Oh, Detective Sergeant Appleby. No, I don't mind you ringing late. Hilda.
Shh, Rumpole, I'm meant to be asleep.
I thought you'd like to know you were right about the fingerprints. They found one. Hilda, are you awake?
I am now.
The thumbprint of someone sent down for robbery with violence many years ago. The old con who drives for the great cricketer and reforms the young Fred Bry. It was Fred Bry who entered our premises by night. You know what this means, don't you? It means that the case of Joby Johnson is not entirely over.
In which case, I'm very glad I had that burglar alarm installed. Good night, Rumpole.
Hilda?
Yes?
You still awake?
Yes, unfortunately.
Thank you for insisting about chasing up those fingerprints, Hilda.
Well, it just goes to show how important it is to have a woman on the case.